Hey there, this is Alex Kluge. I'm here from Toronto Home Experts, and I wanted to thank all our subscribers. If you're not a subscriber yet, please subscribe below, click the like button, and comment below. Definitely helps us with our channel and our YouTube algorithms. All right, so let's dive into the May 2025 market update. All right, before I begin and dive into the numbers, I actually got the most amount of comments from our video last month. And it was kind of interesting because there were some signs of optimism for April. Again, didn't make any proclamations of the Toronto real estate market is in a bull market, but we did see some signs. Now, so people are asking, is it really the bottom? Like, are prices going down, prices going up? And again, I don't have a crystal ball, but some of these numbers can actually help us provide some context in terms of what's happening with this market. Okay, so really the way I'm seeing is, certainly it's a buyer's market, right? Like, I'm going to blanket statement, and that is generally a buyer's market. Now, the one thing that you have to remember is Toronto itself is made up of so many different neighborhoods, and within those neighborhoods are different types of what I call asset classes, whether that's a detached, semi-detached townhouse, condo townhouse, or condo unit. And all of those are actually behaving somewhat differently. So, when someone says, how's the real estate market? I really have to ask, well, my initial answer is really depends, but really have to find out and ask, like, what are you asking about? Are you asking about the bachelor apartment that's in North York that's 400 square feet, or are you asking about the $6.5 million house in Rosedale, or are you asking for the $1 million townhouse condo in the West End? Like, all those markets are behaving very, very differently. But from these numbers, there's actually a lot that we can tell, and I'm really excited to share my findings with this market update. Okay, all right, so let's dive in. So sales volume, unsurprisingly, is down. And if you remember what I said last month, aside from COVID, that was the lowest sales volume we've seen for that particular month over the last 22 years. Again, with what's happening in May, this is the lowest May that we have on record aside from May 2020. Does this surprise me? Absolutely not. It does not surprise me because, really what we're seeing is listings grow, like there's active listings are increasing while sales volume is decreasing. So what happens when we have more supply of properties that are on the market with fewer buyers? Prices typically go down. So, I'm not trying to spoil the end of the movie here, but really that's typically what happens, and that's what we're actually seeing right now. Active listings are up a whopping 41%. So that's a lot from a year ago. And, again, this is not surprising. So, when I said last month, is the market turning a corner? This is actually a really weak May. Like this past month, when we're looking at May 2025, the market is exceptionally weak. And I don't mean that across all property types, but I want to say like there's really several market segments are not performing well. And I'm seeing it just anecdotally with clients when they're saying, hey, I want to look at properties this weekend or this week. I'm actually seeing the amount of properties available to show increasing, right? And this is just my anecdotal evidence. And certainly when there are offer nights, when sellers are accepting offers on a particular day, typically there are no offers, or if there are offers, they're typically rejected. So there's really a shift that's happening with the sellers right now, and actually it's kind of interesting if you're a buyer. Because you certainly have more choice. You can negotiate on terms and price like we haven't seen since basically 2008. Which is great news if you're a buyer. Now, if you're a seller, it's a little bit more challenging. You have to be patient. And also, too, you have to be a little bit more, or your agent has to be a little bit more creative in how they market the property and how they get buyers in. Because really, at the end of the day, it's about positioning your property properly and pricing it appropriately according to what's happening in the market. Okay, so we're talking about average price now. So, again, I said like listings are growing. What's happening with price? Unsurprisingly, prices are down on average for GTA wide 4%. Now, what's interesting is, so this is average for GTA. Now, we dig into condos specifically for 416, so Toronto proper, we are actually prices are down on average 7% year over year. So that's pretty consistent with what I've been seeing just when I'm doing evaluations for clients for properties, but for condos, I should say, like 7% is the average. So if you've got a condo downtown or in North York, like the average decline is approximately the same. So it's pretty close to 7% for each segment. So just from context. Now, what's interesting is months of inventory. So that's the absorption rate. So basically what you take is active listings divided by number of sales in that month. So how quickly is the inventory being absorbed? And for condos, we are at a record high right now. It's 7.2 months of inventory for Toronto. Now, for context, for freeholds, for houses, detached or semi-detached or freehold townhouses, we're actually only at 4.2 months. Like 4.2 is actually pretty high relative to where we were even 2 years ago. But still, so it's showing me, like, if you just look at those two stats, and like those are two of my favorite stats to look at pretty much, right away when I'm looking at that month. And that's telling me that there's more weakness in the condo market than there is in the freehold market, right? And I know I've been saying this for a while, but that's effectively true because the numbers, are saying that. Now, the one thing that I find fascinating, and there's a lot of like headlines that we're seeing on social media or even like mainstream media, and buyers think prices are in a free fall, and yes, prices are down 4% on average from where they were last year, or as I said, condo 7%. But if you look at where prices are over the last 2 years, like the May 2025 prices are effectively the same as they were from March 2023. Like 2 years ago, basically prices haven't changed, right? Like, yes, we've seen some peaks and valleys. And, May 2023, we saw a nice little bump in prices, but then prices slowly came down, and then they came, like, it's basically like a little bit of a wave, so to speak, right? But for context, prices aren't in free fall. And like when people say, oh, prices are back to 2019 levels, that is absolutely not true. That is not what's happening here. Prices are, yes, the same as they were in 2023. And again, typically what we see in a spring market is that prices typically peak in the spring, right? Like typically that's when we see the greatest amount of sales volume, and typically when we see prices typically reach their high point for the spring market. So like the spring goes anywhere from, call it, March to June. So I'm predicting that we're going to see a decline in prices next month, right? Because that's typically what we see in 9 out of 10 June when comparing to May. So So anyways, I find that interesting, and I wanted to share that for context, because if buyers think really prices are coming down that dramatically, yeah, and condos are certainly lower than they were in 2023. But I'm talking average prices. There hasn't been like a huge drop in the floor, so to speak, on pricing. So anyways, when I compare month over month, as I mentioned, like, okay, yeah, so we're up 1.2% over last month. Like that's really a rounding error in my opinion. But yeah, like we've basically been like in an average, like average prices have basically been somewhat flatline for 2 years. And now if you remember, like we saw a massive spike in interest rate that basically started, when we started, that was in 22, and really hit the peak in 23. So, yes, we've started seeing some declines in interest rates, and so variable rates have not changed since the last Bank of Canada meeting. But a lot of economists are forecasting a 50 basis point decline. So this year. So if that happens, I think that's going to help with affordability, and typically that means more buyer activity, and more buyer activity typically means we'll see a little bit of a bump in pricing. So anyways, it'll be fascinating to see if that actually happens, but so we're monitoring these closely. And so that when I like to look at the spring market, like my, really, April, May, June are the months to look at, and that really gives us like a bellwether for, what to expect for the summer, and a little bit of insight into the fall. But anyway, so enough of my rambling here. I went a little bit overboard, but wanted to invite questions like I've been getting. It's been amazing, the feedback that our viewers have been giving us. So please feel free to continue that. And again, if you have questions and you want to know how, whether you're a seller and looking to sell in a market, how this market is affecting you as a seller, or if you're looking to buy a property, like what different neighborhoods are looking like, and how that's affecting buyers, at various price points. But anyway, thanks so much for tuning in, and we will see you again next month.